Well, good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Yesterday was the 6th, and we hear that that was when the tenure of some INEC commissioners, came to maturity, meaning that they had to retire from the system. But this now leaves us short of, 5 or 6, depends on how you look at it. But the elections, the big elections, 2023, just around the corner, and there's been a lot of talk as to, we have very little time because between now and 2023, it looks like there are many calendar months in there, but before we know where we are, it's upon us. And people begin to wonder, will we have a full complement in INEC to do the job? As you probably know, there must be, commissioners representing the geopolitical zones. And so far, well, apart from one attempt, I think, of the president recently, he sent the name of Ms. Loretta Onochie, and the Senate declined to approve. But so there was action. Now, what is the president doing? And people hope that whatever it is, it'll be done, very, very shortly. Just as well as him signing the amended Electoral Act into law. Now, my guests to look at this matter with us is in studio here, Mr. Chukwuma Ezeala. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you very much for making the time for us this morning.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes.
And we have in Abuja with us by remote Mr. Majid Dahiru. Mr. Dahiru is a newspaper columnist and political affairs analyst. So good morning to you, Mr. Dahiru.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, our pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, you know what? If it's okay, let me hear from you because I'm not taking any chances. You are remote. So maybe I could start with you. As soon as I can see a picture, I'll then be sure that, yep, we're together. I can't see your picture yet. I'm still trying to be sure that Mr. Dahiru can see me and I can see him. I can hear you, certainly. Okay, while they're sorting that out, I don't know what the problem is. If Mr. Dahiru has been able to say good morning back to us, he definitely is connected, but I suppose there's still one or two more gremlins within the system. So, okay, Mr. Dahiru, I'm going to wait and make assurance doubly sure till I can see you. In the meantime, I'll switch back to Chukwuma Ezeala. Give me your thoughts on this matter, because look, the president is aware of this timetable as everybody else is. So I'm imagining that are we not making too much out of this? Well, give me your thoughts.
Number one is the national commissioners ought to be 12.
That's right.
Meaning that 2 from each geopolitical zone, And there is a reason why the Constitution said 12 members should be national commissioners. It was also intended to get the feelings of all other geopolitical zones in Nigeria, so that whatever the national, the INEC does will be acceptable. Now, a situation where you have 6 out of 12 no longer in the board, it's so much.
It's a big jump.
It's a big jump, and for some of them, it may even be 2 from a particular geopolitical zone. And we need confidence, but beyond that, we need the robust arguments usually they have when the commission sits. People bring diverse, and then remember also that usually people appointed are with great experience. And when you don't get that experience during the debates, when the commission meets to take a decision one way or the other, then so many things will be lacking, And you also look at the other aspect of it, the political aspect of it. The political aspect of it also becomes, what if some geopolitical zones are underrepresented or not represented at all? How do you really quantify the type of acceptability, to the process? So this is why the fathers of the Constitution said there should be 12, and they also specifically said 2 from a geopolitical zone, exactly. And we have 6 geopolitical zones. So I think the president should act immediately.
You just spoke about experience, because the other question, of course, is, look, what is the pool that the president is able to choose from? By law, there are some restrictions. For instance, as was made, the point was made in the case of Ms. Onoche, that the president cannot appoint anybody who is thought to be or who is seen to be partisan. And remember, even though Ms. Onoche protested vehemently that she was not, she had given up party affiliation and all of that, the public noise was overwhelming, and I think Senate had to yield. So it comes to where are these people actually readily available, or do you think the president needs to look within INEC itself? I don't know. It's not an easy task.
Yes, if I take you a little bit back, when the president came on board in 2015, there were vacancies. He wasted some time and got almost down the line, almost 1 year before he chose the electoral commissioners. And that has come in now. Now you have a system where you have to choose the electoral commissioners. Next year is almost election. It's February of 2023.
Yes.
It means that the work is going to be done between now and May next year. So what does that leave you with? Number one is, for instance, if I go to the first question where we are looking at electoral umpire, unbiased people, at least people who are seemingly unbiased. That is the first point. Then the second point is experience. Even the experience should be the most important one.
Yes.
Now, when we think of experience, and with the timeline we have, the timeline is less than 6 months. For us to begin the real campaigning and the real system, the president should not actually look outside because of the time. It's not a question of coming to understand what they are doing. So I think within the 36, 37 electoral commissioners you have in the states, the president should simply look at those that he can elevate from those areas.
They should be able to find people in there they can pick up
Yes,
stairs,
there are people that have done wonderfully well among the commissioners. So all the president needs to look at is who have done particularly well among the commissioners. And just like when President Jonathan was looking for, you remember what happened during the EU administration? People were fed up with EU. And Jonathan had to shop for people who can replace you, and got Professor Jega. Professor Jega was a member of the civil society group, and people trusted Professor Jega. So I think at this stage, what the president should look, but then he shopped for outside because he had time on his side. He had at least 3 years to prepare. But this time around, I think the situation on ground has circumscribed the president to look within. So that the experience of those people within, there are a lot of them that have done very well. If you look at elections they have presided over, some within the elections they have presided over, we see that they are okay. Some also, just like one of them, I think, in terms of prosecution, because the problem with elections today are, one, prosecution of people that have done the wrong things. Prosecution, because that's where we are also lagging. Sometimes the INEC will do relatively well, people will still rig, people will attempt to rig. When they attempt to rig, what happens? The electoral office in that area, the electoral commissioner and this, are they ready to prosecute? So when you look at all those ones, you see that we still have them within the system, and we have people that can do the work. Okay. So the president should look.
I think we're connected with Majid Dahiru now. Hello again, Majid.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for making the time. I imagine you've been hearing what we've been saying, and I wanted to ask what your take. I mean, it's like the tenure of those that are retiring came to an end yesterday, the 6th, and we're now looking at, those gaps must be filled. What do you think? First of all, where we got to in the conversation, and you can take it back if you need to, where we got to in the conversation, where it's about where are the hands, what pool does the president have to choose from? Do you think he needs to be looking within INEC in the interest of time to see who can be kicked upstairs there, so to speak, or as I imagine some might say, it's not exactly rocket science. Any man or lady of good character should be able to do it. What's your take on how easily doable filling those vacancies will be?
Thank you very much. Ordinarily, for an important institution like the Independent National Electoral Commission, it shouldn't be allowed to have vacancies of this magnitude, 6 out of 12 for national commissioners. They ordinarily will expect that the appointing authorities should have a succession plan in place. They are aware that the tenure of these respected Nigerians will come to an end, and as at yesterday, a replacement should have been announced. We've seen this kind of, should I say, dereliction of duty when it comes to successions in certain government institutions in recent times, and INEC particularly has suffered the same thing in the recent past, and it affected the conduct of the 2019 elections. Now, while we still have the time to make amends, it is imperative that these positions are filled, because we need to give representation to the various geopolitical zones in order to build confidence and trust in the system. Secondly, on the issue of whether to source for replacement from outside or within the institution, I think INEC has actually evolved into an institution that ordinarily should offer the opportunity of career progression to its internal officers and management staffs. I'm saying this because it is important to build strong institutions, and for as long as you keep going outside of this establishment to bring in commissioners, it means you are still running INEC as an ad hoc arrangement that is not mature yet and strong enough to actually ensure career progression within its own system. Now, for the purpose of institutional memory, it's important to begin to groom successors from within, and INEC is not lacking in people of integrity and competence as far as we are concerned. Despite the challenges that INEC has faced in its discharge of its responsibilities and mandate as the electoral umpire of Nigeria, we have distinguished Nigerians within their rank and file that have distinguished themselves creditably well in the discharge of this duty. However, this is not to preclude any other Nigerian who is eminently qualified from being brought in from outside. That is not to say it is cast in stone that it has to be brought from within, but we are saying to further strengthen the electoral body as an institution, I think it is the right time to begin to have career progression for management staffs of INEC. And we are at a crossroad now, electoral crossroad, if you know what I mean. We have a pending bill before the president. And this bill appears to enjoy the consensus of critical stakeholders, the National Assembly, INEC inclusive, and political parties, and the generality of Nigerians. Now, it's our hope that the president will sign this act into law in order to have a reformed electoral management system that truly empowers the Nigerian people to hire and fire their political leadership. Now, laws don't operate themselves. Laws are written, but they do not have life on their own. You require people of integrity, people of character, people of proven competence, and patriotism in this instance, to be able to give life to the letter and spirit of this much anticipated electoral act. Otherwise, we will have a repeat of what happened in the past. Don't forget that INEC has now been lacking in funding or even technology. INEC always had enabling laws that allows you to conduct credible elections, but certain elements within the system, certain elements that were brought in from outside into the system, have sometimes undermined not just the independence of INEC, but its ability to deliver credible elections. In order not to waste all of these efforts that the entire country appears to be galvanized around, we need to have people that we are sure of, people that are credible to drive this process, as we anticipate that the president, whom I know, despite my reservations, despite my criticisms of the president, I know for sure that if there is one thing you cannot take away from the president, it is the fact that he actually means well for this country. But we agree that in some instances, he may not have deployed the right technique or the right approach to solve some of our problems. But this is his last attempt at etching his name in gold, carving his name in the footprints of time. And in addition to signing this law, what is important, or if not most important, is to bring in people into this position that can drive credible electoral process across board.
All right,
because
exactly.
The myriad of problems we face as a country today, we face existential threat from insecurity, economic dislocation, and out of the roof corruption. Some of these things can actually be corrected through a credible electoral process because...
one moment, Majid, I beg your pardon for interrupting. One moment. Yeah, I'll certainly come back to you. From what Majid lists up there, yeah, quite a serious responsibility. But then that's how it is with presidents. All of the responsibilities are quite serious. And, you know, I wonder if one can advance that as reason for the president taking his time. Because as he said, and as is generally known, it's absolutely crucial that people come into those positions, so to speak, the board of INEC, so to speak, that everybody is sort of happy with that. Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know, Jega, for instance, you know, and quite a number of other notables who have actually contributed to the process. Everybody was on board with them when they were appointed. The president has even reappointed, and the president has shown, I would think, his commitment, staying where I am here, sitting at this end of it, to credible elections. Look at the case of Anambra. As Anambra was swinging, as it were, at that time to the left and to the right, when he finally was going to come into it, it was to admonish that absolutely nothing must happen to compromise the integrity, successful conduct of this election. So if people didn't know it before, they seized that opportunity to know that, oh, this is not a matter of reading body language. This is a directive. And so we're very, very clear what side because often people talk about the powers that be, what side the powers that be are on. So in this kind of a situation, that's what sort of, you know, says to me that he's going to do it, but people are worried about the time frame. People want it as of yesterday. Yes. People want that by the time the tenure expired of those 5 gentlemen, plus the one who had resigned earlier, yes, following the last election, yes, that maybe there would have been a list ready to just send straight up to the National Assembly. The president probably needs to take his time and do it once so that he doesn't run into the kind of quick stand, if I can call it that he did with Mr. Noche. That was real quicksand. He quickly swallowed everybody up, and nobody has said anything more about it since then.
You see, I do think that the president knew of the expiration as far as 1 year ago.
Yes.
And I think as far as 3 months ago, the president ought to have sent list to the National Assembly for whatever it means, for them to clear the candidates. But it's not done till date. The National Assembly will go on, the Senate particularly, will go on recess by 15th of December. And if the list is not sent, it means we'll get into January. And that is clear election year. And it's something that we cannot under. The president, like you said, and which many of us agree, has the interest of the country at heart. He's also disposed to good elections, because even before Anambra, Edo election was very nice. Ondo election was also a progress report, and Anambra followed suit. That is the body language. Now, how do you go about this? And then we now have the Electoral Act, as my colleague stated. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is on the table. It has very good provisions. But you will not need somebody outside who is not part of the process to look at it and get it processed. Now, remember that
you are saying that injecting new blood into, as it were, the board. I'm referring to it as the board.
Yes.
It might not be properly so, but going out of INEC, you would frown at that.
At least for the six. If you say one or two members of the civil society group, and then to join to 4 or 5 that will be promoted from the electoral commissioners, that is fine.
Because there was talk about institutional memory.
Yes, institutional memory.
That's what to hit the ground running.
Yes, that is why I'm saying at least a minimum of 4 or 5 from the institution. For instance, somebody conducted election in Edo State who did well. Somebody also did in Ondo State. The one in Akwa Ibom State has been doing wonderfully well. If you also have 1 or 2 also from the national commission, from the electoral commissioners, coming up, and maybe 1 or so from outside INEC, there is nothing wrong in having that. But having almost all of them coming from outside INEC may not necessarily be the right thing.
Okay, which hasn't been said. No such suggestion has been made yet.
Yes.
So this is just in the nature of advice.
Yes, that is really in the nature of advice, so as to progress on the electoral bill that is on the table. And we also urge the president to please sign the electoral bill. Yesterday also, INEC has sent its own advice, because he requested for advice from INEC to say, do I sign this? INEC said yes. INEC put down the benefits of signing the electoral bill into law. You have the BVAS, you have the INEC result portal, you have so many things that INEC has done right. Remember that in 2018, the president rejected the electoral bill 3 times in 2018. And part of the reason was also the electronic transmission of results. And we have seen in Anambra State, they did the electronic transmission, though unofficially. But the law will now empower them to do it officially and to use it for the purposes of validating the results. So, and that will restore confidence.
Why is that? What you've just spoken about now, it seems to be a bit controversial, by which I mean that a lot of, there would appear to be some people against it. And then there are those, of course, who are for it. Maybe tell me what you think the reason for that is before I take it over to Majid.
Yes, number one, I have been part of elections, in fact, as far back as 1999, and indeed as a participant in political parties as far back as 1989 to 1992. Now, just like people are arguing about the direct primaries, remember that in 1989 to 1992, we had what you really call direct primaries, including the election where we option A4. And people were happy with it. It had its own flaws, yes. Now, fast forward, there is actually nothing wrong with it. Only that those that want to deal with the people, those that don't want people's votes to count, they will certainly be against it. In 2003 and 2007, we had the worst elections we ever had in Nigeria. And we've been thinking, how do we go up? At the civil society group, we're thinking, what type of electoral system we've been engaging with INEC ever since then, trying to fashion out. Now, technology has given us the wonderful thing. And let me tell you, if I were part of the National Assembly, what stops political parties from using their phones to record what happens in the electoral booths, in case there are problems?
But as you know, phones are not allowed.
No, phones, no. They did not prohibit the use of phone. The only thing is that you're not going to use it officially to do anything.
Okay.
There is nothing wrong. There is no way in the electoral that says you can't use your phone
in the booth.
Yes, no, there is nothing. No, while voting.
Okay.
While voting, you can't use your telephone. That's what the INEC regulation said. You can't use it while voting. But nothing stops you from using it outside the booth to look at what is, assuming that for instance, if there is counting stage, I did not see any INEC regulation or INEC law or the electoral act that says you can't even record what happens at that time. So it's still part of a process of electronic transmission, only that it's not an official system of transmitting election results. Now, part of the reasons why the bill was rejected in 2018 was also, although the presidency gave reasons of the way the sections were arranged, but some people also said it was also because of the e-transmission. So some of those people who are confusing the presidency who don't want the presidency to sign this. Maybe because, remember, in those days, I had stated that where election is rigged is usually at the collation center. And that is what we call wholesale rigging. You know, the retail rigging of bringing people, giving them 50 naira or giving them 5,000 or whatever, it's not actually the rigging. The rigging is where there are 1,000 votes, and then by the time it gets to the collation center at the ward level or at the local government level, you now have 50,000 votes, just like what we had in Anambra. One of the political parties had more than 200,000 persons that nominated him as a candidate. And at the election, didn't get up to 50,000.
So you wonder what is going on.
So,
could I quickly come over to you, Majid? This whole question about, signing the electoral amendment electoral law amendment into law, and the contending forces, so much so that they say lobbying has even moved over to the presidency now. What's your read on that, and how important is it to keep direct primary in there? It seems that not everybody is happy with the whole principle of direct primary.
It's important for us to understand that only those who do not want a people-powered democracy will be against direct primaries. And any party that insists that it cannot conduct direct primaries does not deserve to exist, and INEC should be registered such a party. Direct primaries have been done before, as rightly pointed out by my colleague, during the zero-party era of the 80s in 1988, up until the Third Republic, the short-lived Third Republic. Direct primaries was operational. In fact, let me tell you this, from my experience with direct primaries, it is the cheapest form of primaries, it is the most organized, it is the easiest form of body election. The only challenge with direct primaries is that those who have appropriated political parties to themselves and have turned it into a platform for power grab for self-service are against losing this privilege of having a thoroughly democratized leadership development process through the political parties.
So the argument, part of the argument that it's expensive and not all parties can afford it doesn't hold much water with you.
It does not hold water at all. It is not expensive. It is the cheapest form of primary elections. Very cheap, very easy. All it takes is for each party executive at the world, government and state level to organize their members around their respective polling units. It doesn't take much.
Okay.
What it takes is for members, the executive committee at the world level, for example, will coordinate the ones in their ward. They will come out and file behind the agents of the respective aspirants, and the head count will be done and recorded. All it requires is for parties to have integrity, to obey their own rules, to have fidelity to their own rules, and have no ulterior motives. That is all that is required.
Okay, we're looking at the appointment, well, at least the sending names to the National Assembly for approval by the President to fill up the gaps of national commissioners that we need in INEC. We've spoken about where he might get them from, the merits and demerits of going out and all of that. As we were leaving, Mr. Majid Dahiru was speaking, but I said I would come back to you. Now, did you go to A4, Majid, and we were talking about direct primaries. Was that an error of some sort? Because A4 in this case would not be like direct primaries. I think we're having a problem.
It was a modified direct primaries.
Okay.
When primary election, yes, took place from the ward to the government or the state level, and you have to emerge from your ward first, and then to the next level, and to the next before you can come for the national convention as an aspirant. A lot of prospective aspirants then for presidential election actually lost at their ward, and that was how they couldn't actually get nominated. So it was like a graduated form of direct primaries, especially for the presidential level. What I'm saying is, I used to remember them to line up behind our candidates. Line up, and we had count, and it starts and ends there. And so what this will do for the political parties is this. Beyond just being a special purpose vehicle to grab power for self-service. The huge cost that is deployed to indirect primaries, because the space is constricted and made very expensive. You've heard the governor describe certain political parties as tax collectors. Now, this will break that system, that corrupt system that thrives on patronage. And this patronage is at the expense of the public treasury. Now, this will now allow the parties to begin to organize their members now around certain pragmatic ideals of improving our economy, welfare, environment, and all other existential needs. And so you discover that the members of the parties will now begin to align their democratic choices with who best promises a good governance structure that can improve their lives. So this will allow the parties to evolve from just a political party to one that is ideologically driven. So there will not be competition of ideas, because you have thousands, if not millions of party members. You cannot possibly buy all of these people with enough money. And so the parties will not be forced to be ingenious. Those who want to aspire now will now come in with very compelling message that they can use to convince people to vote for them in their own interests. And what this will do for us is that you will find out those who believe so much in this message will vote for him for free of charge, and even volunteer to be his party agents across all polling units because they believe in his message. In 2015 here, it happened when the country became convinced that the problem of Nigeria was corruption, and corruption was synonymous to PDP and Goodluck Jonathan. They opted for a man whose antecedents showed otherwise, that he was an incorruptible fellow who would be able to tackle corruption. And I'm talking about President Muhammadu Buhari. Nigerians voted for that ideal candidate for free. Quote me anywhere. Nigerians actually donated for the first time in my adult life. I saw the ordinary Nigerian donating to his campaign fund because they believe so much in his essence, in his personality. So it tells you that democracy is not all about cash and carry, and it's not always about a corrupt process. When you bring a good brand, a good product, somebody who has verifiable integrity, somebody who has an antecedent of selfless service to the public, somebody who can be trusted, and with a message that spells out clearly prosperity within a framework of good governance for the majority of the people, such a person can emerge freely without the encumbrance of money bags that dominate the political scene today. The indirect primary system had enabled these money bags to procure party tickets and flags at every electoral circle, and that has impacted negatively on governance structure.
Okay.
Some of the issues we are facing today is a lot of the flawed political system in Nigeria that allows the highest bidder to emerge at every electoral circle. And when you spend so much money to procure a few delegates at very high cost, because it becomes unsafe to the highest bidder.
Okay.
To dip your hand into the public to recover your investment.
Let me bring the idea. I beg your pardon. Sorry, Majid. Let me bring the idea to Chukwuma here. You know, it has been suggested that, look, if this whole matter, that singular issue of direct primaries is not the entirety of the law before the president, that if it's going to be that much of a, shall we say, a hot potato, people have said that so that we don't lose a lot of other good stuff within the entire bill itself, they've suggested that, well, perhaps you could sort of excise that out. What do you think of that kind of an idea? Do you think that would help? Because it's going to be contentious. Here we are speaking about people, the soul of the party, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. A lot of people who now want to exercise their right and all of that are not really financial members of the party. There are some who are financial members of the party and to whom all of this is not very funny.
I think at this stage, this is election. The Electoral Act or the bill ought to have been signed by now. Now, if for any reason we have anything, because the president on its own cannot remove any portion of it. It's already a bill made by the National Assembly. Now, the option open to the president, in order for us not to lose momentum, is to sign and maybe send an amendment bill again. so that INEC can have something to work on. But look at the entire area that is not in controversy. Look at the electronic transmission of results, very wonderful.
And these are beneficial.
Yes, and these are things we are going to look at. The early submission of list of candidates. Remember that before there is a particular timeline which was not necessarily very good to submit your list of candidates, and before they can be challenges and the candidates settling down to campaign, the election will be there. It's a very big challenge. You also have the power of INEC to review results. You know, in the elections, you will see sometimes somebody will say, oh, I signed under duress. I did this, I did that. And under the law, starting from 1989 into the 1999 Electoral Act, INEC do not have power to change or to review a result as announced by the presiding officer or as announced by either the electoral officer for the area. INEC do not have such powers. But under the provision, if the electoral officer says, oh, I did this under duress, INEC has power now to say no, based on the evidence, also based on the results transmitted to INEC from the floor. So we can't look at this and say, oh, because some people do not want direct primaries, because some people want direct primaries, therefore it cannot be signed and it will be sent back to National Assembly is going on recess on the
yes, that's 15th. What we don't want.
And then what do you want again? The Electoral Act ought to be ready as early as yesterday. You know, so the INEC will know this is what we are preparing for. Then also the budget will be able to capture it. And sometimes if you look, some people that are arguing on the financial implication, what is the financial implication? We're not talking about option A4. We are talking about that in a particular ward, in a particular area, people should gather. They're not going to be transported. They will be there. All that INEC owes them is to send one representative to go there and see what they are doing. And that is all.
Yeah, but you know, the question has also been raised as to whether INEC has the manpower, the wherewithal to be able to do so, especially if this is the way it is across the country and there are a number of parties that are organizing their primaries at the same time.
INEC did it in 1989, INEC did it in 1991, did it in 1992. So how can INEC not have capacity now? What is the meaning of capacity in that?
Enough said.
Yes.
Let's quickly check. Mazi Okorafor in Arochukwu. Good morning, sir. Mazi Okorafor.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Good morning, Mr. Dela. Good morning, Mr. Dahiru. Now, direct primary to me is the best option for Nigeria. One, he said, two, transparent. No cause for that issue. And that was not we started. The many people that INEC supposed to bring on board. The INEC should be very sure the names they are submitting, at least don't you have up to 4 or 5 years to do what? To work as INEC staff. It's a situation whereby you submit names, no free way that they have 2 years to go or 3 years to go. It's not healthy. Now, INEC will not tell they don't have staff there to do that job. People are there. But the question is that upgrade them or promote them to that level so that it will be very easy. Not the situation where you submit names. By the time you come back, people will go to court and say, so person name, and it's not, it has not reached the level to do what? To serve as those remaining people.
Mazi, I beg your pardon for interrupting you. What do you think of the idea of looking outside of INEC as just as a concept? Are you with that or against it?
Now, looking outside is that you let us come into the reality of life. When you look outside, there are a lot of politics involved. People will say that this was not on the job. That's number one. When they say the person is not on the job, that means it's not groomed. Look at what happens to power. When they brought power to EFC, they say yes, it has been going from the rank to rank to rank at least. And this is very well known. Many Nigerian civil servants, they hate any government to go and bring somebody from outside to come and work with them. That is what is happening in Nigeria. If even as a director general of any place, you go and bring somebody from outside, they start work against you, end up crumbling, you end up not achieving anything. So the best option for the government, bring in somebody from that place, a career diploma from that organization, and appoint that person. Look, we have reached a level that we should not be going to bring stuff from maybe somebody to oversee. You have been joined you go there, you just bring it back to Nigeria to start eating and business. It will not work well in Nigerian system. So I suggest the government bring somebody from organization of. Now you ask yourself, Shayuri, don't they have qualified people in terms of paper qualification, in terms of age, in terms of exposure, in terms of what? The knowledge. So what the idea going to, and you have been training them. While training them, after training them, you go outside and bring somebody. But if the government says that, but the question is that you should bring a career diplomat who knows what to do.
Okay.
To bring somebody who will bring us back, because
okay.
Europe, Nigeria, read this alert. See how people is going. It's affecting us economically. Many Nigerians are supposed to go to Canada and write it. They can't go back. They are here. Many of them they have been on Russia, which is not healthy. Not so very much have the present day in Lagos.
So thank you very much. Chukuma, why I was exploring the outside option is that unless the president feels that they're trying to box him into a particular corner, he should be able to have the entire field free to choose either from within or without. And when it comes to choosing without, that is not from within INEC, I don't know, you might say it's not quite the same. In the corporate world, you've seen it done.
Yes.
You've seen president of Coca-Cola being brought across to head up Apple now, for example.
Yes.
Never mind the accuracy.
Yes.
You get the point of what I'm saying. So because the campaigns that are going on, there's a lot of logic involved in look within. A person can hit the ground running in very much the same way as a politician is going to be able to do a better job of being a president as opposed to somebody who has never had any public taste of public service before. It's not as if it's impossible to get an ideal candidate even though he isn't from within INEC, or do you think otherwise?
Number one is that note that almost all the electoral commissioners, in fact all of them, were actually appointed by this current president.
Yes.
So you wouldn't say he's being boxed into people he didn't know.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes,
so it's not like he's going to get people from PDP or get people that these are people that he appointed, because
and even
all
have appointed some.
That's the point. No, the point is that none of them was appointed less than 5 years ago, and the president has stayed more than 5 years. That it simply means even if he had reappointed, he appointed. That's the point. So he's not being boxed into an area where he is not familiar with. The only thing we're saying is because of time.
Okay.
And the fact that we need to maintain institutional memory.
Yes, that's very important.
Do you understand? So the president is not being coerced or forced to do a particular thing that is against his interest. Now, what we said is, just look at how many of them that have done well. Of the 37 of them, look at those that have done well, and especially those that they are. Yes, it's possible to consider. That is it.
Reverend Dominic, good morning, sir. Reverend Dominic, good morning, sir. I know you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Go on, please.
There's one issue our government, our government. When the ITP is about to retire, it was sudden to us. Why should it be sudden to a big government like this? They have the officers all over Nigeria. These people that retire now, they know they will retire by today. Why do you find it difficult to change people easily in our nation since they come into power? That's by design. This whether indirect or direct families, to me, it looks like a man drinking for some of somebody's headache. We could have not put it in the electoral at all. Let the political parties do what is best and present a candidate of their choice. If they bring wrong one, to their own glory or to their own shame. If they bring a bad one, to their glory or to their shame. It seems to me that they have put this thing in the electoral to put down all the good work is done. Now what happened in third term? In third term, Suleiman, the presidency of INEC, did the work. The third term put down all the things they did. It seems to be people who hate electronic votes put this act in order to pull everything down. And this one, I don't know why Mr. President is silencing now. If I'm spoken yes or no, so we know where we are. That's my own contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But we do know that, again, bringing it to you, Majid, we do know that the president is a man who likes to take his time on these matters. That has been referred to this morning. In fact, there was a time when people said he was slow, Majid. But can you see it from the president's point of view, this delay from, people who are not sitting in his seat, the delay in doing the needful? Is it in order to get it right? Because in any case, those vacancies, they need to be filled. Those vacancies need to be filled for us to continue our pace with a sort of an integrity of mind that all is well. Let's now go out there on the field and deal with it as necessary.
That makes offices vacant when they're supposed to be filled is not one that is a virtue of leadership. It's not a good quality of leadership. And it's something we should not even glamorize at all, or even tolerate. An enabling law sets up this institution. And at any point in time, all commissioners are supposed to be in place. That is the intent of the law establishing INEC. And so for me, it's even a breach of INEC law that for more than 24 hours now, we don't have people in those positions. For me, it's a failure of leadership on the part of Mr. President. And that's why I was telling him that this sort of failure might derail the entire electoral process. And he has an opportunity now to make these amends quickly. And that is why we're even suggesting that, look, if it will take you too much time, like it took you to appoint ministers in your first term, you can actually look inward. There are quality people in the system, those that have distinguished themselves in the last 5 or 10 years that have been in this position. Mm-hmm. And this is not to foreclose the possibility of bringing anybody from outside. No, it should be open to both people within and outside. But what we are saying is, due to the constraint of time, mm-hmm. like my colleague argued, and
the institutional memory thing,
because this set of people they're part of those that drafted this law as critical stakeholders. So I'm sure they know the intent behind the law and they know how to operate it.
Okay. Let me take Bassi. Okay. Mr. Bassi has called in from Abuja. I'm sorry. Good morning, Mr. Bassi.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I must say that I'm happy with their program. I'm happy with what the discussion, the conversation that is going on. But I'm very surprised that up till now we'll still be arguing primaries that what is mode of primary that is best for a common Nigeria. Because I listened to the argument against direct primary. When I listened to the argument sounds very funny. Because what is the argument? Direct primary will require huge deployment of personnel by INEC. It will require huge deployment of resources. And the argument is if we have a situation like we have and let's say of public gatherings and all of that stuff. I find it trouble because I think people are not telling us the truth. They're not telling us the truth because if you want to play by the rules, if you want to go by the rules, indirect primary requires a huge deployment of personnel and resources more than direct primary. It requires, because I keep saying indirect primary is two sets of primaries, direct primary first and indirect. So it requires that INEC will first deploy for a direct primary, and then after they will now go and deploy for the direct primary again to elect even the candidates of the party. And when it goes to you deploy huge resources and all of that. So when I hear of these arguments, if they tell us that they want to for indirect primary and right for then the argument of thoughts, the shouldn't even come in. Tell us that they want the right list of delegates. But if you want the people party members to vote delegates, if you want party members to vote delegates, this argument doesn't go. It doesn't go at all. Because it's something. The other man who is contesting for the ticket of the party, even you are asking the first subject himself to mobilize delegates for party members to vote. And thereafter, then go after, go for the election, and we still, with the delegate that has actually made. The reason what is, I am going straight back to the members in the direct primary. And if I get it, that's fine. So when we keep hearing of deployment of huge resources, huge personnel, the INEC and all of that, this is not true. They are hiding something.
Okay, Mr. Bassi, I've got to come in a bit now. I'm so sorry, but thank you very much for calling in, and I did that because of time. Majid, you did say that you are a bit disappointed that this is the first day after, and nobody knows of any name yet that the president might be working on to talk less of it being transmitted to the National Assembly. So I guess the long and short of all of this is that the sooner we do know those names, and the sooner the National Assembly gets hold of those names and approves them, or just works them, handles them, the better for all of us in relation to a successful conclusion of the 2023 election, right? In closing.
Exactly.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much.
Should be done.
Okay. I'd like to thank you very much for making time for us. We've completely run out of time. Mr. Majid Dahiru, newspaper columnist and political affairs analyst. Thank you very much for joining us from Abuja. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. So really, that's the bottom line there. It's one day after now. Those commissioners are out of office, and so there are all those vacancies. We can't have those vacancies. I don't think we can have those vacancies for much less than. Really, everybody now has to work at high speed. Maybe the president will send something across, if not today, this week. And then, because you reminded us that the Senate is proceeding on break.
Yes.
And so it would be really nice to wrap this up before they go on break, if at all possible, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. It's very important it's done. And also the signing of the electoral bill.
Of course.
Now, I think the
granted.
president actually said he was making consultations. And I think if the president must make consultations, it's only to the Council of States.
Okay.
Where you have past presidents and people who will tell him the truth and ask him to go
ahead.
ahead.
Here, but I want to thank you very much as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chukwumeka Ezeala, legal practitioner and commentator on public affairs. That's our program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folani. Bye-bye for now.